Good afternoon, everybody. We do have a revised agenda today based on the weather conditions. We asked a couple guests if they wouldn't mind rescheduling since they were coming in from Baltimore and Annapolis. And so we kept some things on here that needed our immediate attention. The very first thing on our agenda is a special session for the introduction of an ordinance to extend the franchise agreement with Antietam Cable while we continue negotiations. Is there a motion to go into special session at this time?
So moved.
Second.
I have a motion and a second to go into special session. Motion made by Mr. Metzner and seconded by Mr. Munson. Any discussion? All those in favor of going into special session, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? All right, we'll take up this ordinance if there is a motion.
Mr. Mayor, I hereby move that the detached ordinance be introduced authorizing an additional 3-month extension of the cable television franchise agreement with Antietam Cable Television.
Second.
Motion made by Mr. Metzner and seconded by Mr. Brubaker. And did anyone have any discussion, questions for staff? I know that they're continuing the negotiations, and this just gives them a little more time to continue that.
The current extension runs through February 1st, so this would run from
May
February
1st.
1st to May 1st.
All right, we'll call the question. All those in favor of the introduction of the ordinance, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? The ordinance is introduced, and we'll have this on again for approval next week under unfinished business. And we'll get back to our preliminary agenda in just a minute. The next thing on our, and we'll adjourn the special session, we'll go into work session, the Holiday Storybook 2013.
I have to apologize, the presidents of Frostburg State Education Association, because of the weather, they couldn't make it in, Catherine Colbert and Angela McNamara. However, they've put together a great storybook holiday. They actually are putting it together all themselves, which includes storytelling at the Washington County Free Library, holiday cookie decorating at the city market, breakfast with Santa at the Academy Theater, a glimpse of the Velveteen Rabbit with the Children's Theater, University Plaza Alpha Olympics, University USMH Holiday Crafts and Face Painting in University Plaza. And that's all this Saturday, and you can call 240-527-2730 for more information. And as we're partnering with nonprofits, this is another nonprofit we're partnering with. We're helping to promote it, and they're putting on the activity.
Wonderful.
Good job.
Excellent. We congratulate them on their efforts, and we're glad to support them. Glad to see them doing that. The next thing on the agenda is the proposed utility relief concert for 2014.
Councilmember Penny and I proposed to do a utility relief concert of March of 2014. A little background, the previous 3 concerts were held in 2007, 2008, and 2010. They raised approximately, from our records, a net of $54,000 from the 3 together. In order to do such a concert, there are some items that would be needed. The first would be some seed money of $2,500 that is not currently in the budget for startup money. Staff allocation of time, a committee to be put together. We would want to secure a nonprofit with a similar mission to be a partner, and assistance with promotion from our department. And so those are the items that are needed. We wanted to see if mayor and council would like us to move forward, and those are the items that we would need to move forward.
Thank you. Ms. Nye, would you like to add to that?
Nope, I've already been this twice now, so it's either voted up, voted down. Let's move on.
Other council members'
Yes.
feedback? Got a yes? Don's a yes. Marty's a yes. Kristen? He's a yes. I see him nodding his head. Let the record show.
Let the record show what long legs Penny has.
All right. Well, it looks like there's consensus for support, and we'll, I guess, there's tacit approval then for the 2,500 and staff participation. All right. Thank you so much
Thank you,
for
Mayor
your
and Council.
initiative on that.
And thanks for all the support for both Hollyfest and the tree lighting.
Well, I
They were
tell you,
both
I
good
got
events.
lots of compliments
Wow.
for a rescheduled event. It was a very nice turnout, and I don't know if Councilmember Nye wants to report on if she had any leftover hot chocolate, but
Yes, and it went to the Police Athletic Club as well as did all of the cookies. But we still went
Great.
through 11 gallons of hot chocolate, so for it being changed, it was still wonderful.
yeah, and it's definitely looking like Christmas time in Hagerstown now.
Yep.
So thank you so much for that work, Karen, and the rest of the city staff for making it look so beautiful. Next item on the agenda is our preliminary agenda review, and just want to call everybody's attention to Mr. Alshire. You do have the invocation next week. Of course, we'll be taking our citizen comments. We are going to have our budget work session at 4 p.m. prior to the regular session at 7, so make sure you mark your calendars for that. Budget work session at 4. For the consent agenda, it looks like there's just one purchase, the HVAC upgrade at the wastewater treatment plant barn. Under unfinished business, we'll be adopting the ordinance for the extension of the Antietam Cable franchise agreement. Any questions on those first two things? Under new business, of course, we may be introducing the ordinance for the crime-free housing, although certain council members have come to me about some concerns. Maybe we want to put that on a work session.
I would recommend we take this off the agenda for next week and put it in a work session.
I would agree with that.
Okay. We will take that off of new business and look to introduce that later. Item B under new business on the preliminary agenda is the introduction of an ordinance, the revisions to Chapter 95, excessive use of police services. Is there interest in keeping that on there, or do we want to keep that with the previous item?
They seem to go together.
For discussion, yeah, I would imagine. So those two items will come off. Item C, under the preliminary, introduction of an ordinance, revisions to Chapter 197, rental facilities. Again, is that the same, that's the same package
I believe it
of
is.
ordinances? So we'll remove that as well. Look at all those together. We're good to keep the noise ordinance on there. We have the introduction of that ordinance. Any questions on that? Okay, so we're good to keep that on there. Acceptance of the dedication offer, Kramer Alley, Bixler Alley, Olvine Court, Hager's Crossing Drive portion, Falling Timber Circle portion, and Gemstone Drive portion. So we have that under new business. Any questions on that item? Approval of a resolution, Hagerstown Ice and Sports Complex Operating Agreement. This is what we discussed last week. Any questions on that? Yes, sir.
I have a question, and I think I'm going to need Rodney. And Rodney, I didn't get a chance to broach this with you before. I apologize. The timing here on the motion concerns me a bit, because it sounds to me like once the operating board is formed, we're going to terminate the operating agreement with the Youth Hockey Association. But then we have, will we have, if the board is just formed, will we have formed an actual new operating agreement with them at that time? And if so, then we need to make that clearer in the motion.
Okay, sure.
Because it's not, it sounds to me like the way this is set up, that we'll terminate them and then we'll negotiate a new one, and we can't have a lapse. There has to be, one ends
Yeah,
and
there-
one's
there was
begin.
time, yeah.
And I don't think this makes it clear. And maybe instead of working out the wording now, you got to look back on the way we're trying to do this. But I just don't want a situation where we have them come in, and we may not agree with everything that they want to do in a new operating agreement. So
So you're saying tighten up the language in the motion?
tighten up the language in the motion so there's no lapse between, the termination of one agreement and the other one, and the necessary approvals. And, maybe you need to have, and I don't think it's going to be very practical to have the current one run through, so maybe the board gets, I don't know. I'll leave it to you rather than, but you see my issue?
Right. Well, I think, just to put some dates to it, it looks like maybe the end of March is about when they'll be ready to take over, and we'll terminate this one, so probably in March. But you're exactly right.
But
One
I don't
should
want to
end and the
terminate
other-
the other and even approve the board, I guess, until
we're ready.
we have a new agreement.
Yep.
I think they almost
Yep.
have to happen at the same time.
Yeah,
Because it's not going to do any good to have the new board and then still have the old agreement. I think that's a recipe for real problems. So, you know, I think the new operating agreement has to be part and parcel of the board starting up, the new board.
I agree.
Okay.
Well, what Mark Boyer suggested to us is when they start up their new board, they ought to have, one of their first resolutions ought to be that they enter into an operating agreement with the city of Hagerstown.
Right, but what I'm saying is that needs to be worked out so that there's no
Lapse.
lapse.
Yeah. Understood. Understood.
And no chance that if we disagree with it, that there'll be a lapse. Now, I don't want to be forced into a condition where, hey, we got to agree with it.
Yeah. We'd have to be happy with it before we terminate the other one.
Right,
Right. Understood. I'll work on the wording.
okay.
Okay, any other questions on that item? Item G, under the preliminary new business, approval of a license agreement with Valley Pride LLC, Shenandoah Family Farms. Any questions on that item? They're requesting some
Right.
regrading and,
Rodney, but we'd retain rights to, if it wasn't working out, right?
Right. It's a license agreement. It's still our,
Right.
in some cases, fee simple, some of it's a right-of-way, but we still would remain in control of that. Basically, what it is put a fence across it, and in the back where the loading dock is, they want to regrade that area so that they're going to have a lot of trucks going
Yeah, I
through
want to
there.
encourage them to do their
Yeah.
stuff, but I
Yeah.
want to make sure that we don't.
Yeah, I think this is the instrument that'll allow that to happen.
all right, thank you. Any other questions on that item? Item H, approval of the Community Coalition Lobbyist Funding. Any questions on that? And item I, under the preliminary new business, approval of the Enterprise Fund dividend policy. Also, just want to make sure folks know, under new business, we'll be putting contract extensions. As a result of the executive session today, the council has agreed to extend the fire contract for 6 months and the police contract for 3 months. So those items will be going under new business. Yes, Mr. Alshire.
Just for clarification, and that's fine if folks want to do it, but the 3 items, A, B, and C, the three folks that want to table this for additional discussion? Lou, Don, Marty?
And I know Mr. Metzner just brought up some concerns that he has just prior to our executive session with me, and in the meantime, I think some of those questions could be answered by staff, and we'll put that on for a work session to continue the discussion. Any other questions about the preliminary agenda? All right, moving right along. The Stage 2 Disinfectant byproduct rule. This is the most exciting portion of our meeting tonight. And I understand we were going to have a guest for this presentation, but
Jeremy Heiss of Hazen and Sawyer, who's been our project engineer since inception on this. We gave him the evening off instead of fighting the Baltimore route up and down for his safety and our peace of mind also.
So this is about the mayor's house, right?
funny guy.
In a roundabout way, yes. We've been working with MDE since 2006 on the disinfectant byproduct rule and entered into an agreement actually with Hazen and Sawyer in 2011 for the design and engineering of the project. It's actually in 2 phases. It's a phase 4A and phase 4B, and I'll kind of expand on that a little bit more. We are meeting the regulatory requirements set forth by the US EPA and down through the Maryland Department of the Environment. We have had 8 mayor and council discussions in just the past 2 years. You've been a part, some of you all of them, and some of you more of the recent ones, specifically with our, I think in March we were up for the consent agreement that we have with MDE for a 2-year extension. When the regulatory requirements were written, they knew that they were somewhat onerous and under time constraints for us to meet. So the US EPA actually had written into the documents basically 2-year extensions for everyone. MDE was, I believe, pleased with that because they were inundated with information to review, and they couldn't meet the deadlines either. So we're one of a few that have entered into an extension agreement with the Maryland Department of the Environment on this. Once again, it's a two-phase project. Council approved earlier this year. It's $11.1 million. $1.5 million of it was grant funding. $1.5 million of it was a loan relaxation, principal forgiveness to take the project $3 million less to the citizens. When we started with the initial engineering and design of the project, we were well over $20 million for the project and scaled it back. Felt that we could give our residents and citizens and users a good product at a least cost to them, and we've done that through design engineering, once again all approved by the Maryland Department of the Environment. Our first phase, once again in the stage approach, with sulfuric acid system, we can go through the principles of it up here. We're doing some work with the filters. Filter backwash is being changed at the plant. Once all this is done, the plant should be operational in its new Phase 4A form sometime in the spring, and we'll look at the disinfectant products that are in that water, and we have to make a decision at that time if we're going to be required to move forward with the chloramination process, which is an ammonia feed, which will be injected in the secondary treatment process of the system. Our initial engineering and design study showed that we're more than likely going to be required to go that far. But up until that point, we have to make full notification to all of our stakeholders, which is the county, the health department, our consecutive systems, the hospitals, any dialysis groups, because it is a change in our filters, our secondary treatment system. What we did, we put together Jeremy, and all we've been once again working on it for many years to put this together. We need to do public outreach meetings. This is the first one. We wanted to give the mayor and council a look first, hopefully their agreement. It is somewhat wordy, it is somewhat technical, because we want to use the same process for everyone we see. So there will be, of course, MDE engineers have reviewed it. To take it out on the road, we'll be as kind as possible to people in our explanation, but we did want to make sure we covered every aspect so that everyone would be satisfied that we did our homework on what we needed to do, made all the sound decisions. As a setup for that, then I'll go through through what we put together for the PowerPoint. I'm sorry, that's my fault. And some of the slides are very chemistry driven, and I'll jump over them when we get to them. They're for other audiences to enjoy. So if you would, Nancy's going to once again run through the process here and kind of give you the narratives on what we did and why.
I'm going to start with the partners screen, because one of the very first things we had to do is we had to meet with Funkstown, Smithsburg, and Williamsport, because they're a consecutive system. The federal regulation, state regulation requires that they be partners in this project and moving forward. So we've done that. We've gotten written letters from those communities. We've also touched base with Washington County through the permitting process and that sort of thing, so they're also very aware of the project.
And we did meet with Emeritus Medical Center with the Vice President to make notification to them also. They're a major stakeholder in this process. So we've started some of the process already.
Yeah. You can probably skip this slide.
Yeah.
I'm just going to touch base on this slide real briefly. We have 5 pressure zones, we have 4 pumping stations, and 8 storage tanks. And the importance of that is our average daily demand is 11 to 12 million. Our monthly daily demand is, we have a peak of about 14 million. The importance of those numbers and that understanding of the system is water age. As water travels out into the far reaches of the system, it gets a little older. So in the far reaches, it's about 5 days old, or that's the calculated age of the water. That's a major driving force behind THM, the disinfectant byproduct formation. Our concern is total trihylomethanes. The disinfection process, it does not sterilize, it disinfects or it kills pathogens, viruses, that sort of thing. Specifically, ones that we watch the most is, of course, is the Giardia and the Cryptosporidium. Public water suppliers are required to maintain a residual in their distribution system. So what that means is once you get past the primary disinfection that happens at the plant, you have to maintain some level of chlorine throughout your entire distribution system. Time, temperature, and the addition of chlorine or maintaining that chlorine is what causes that formation to occur. And that's part of the secondary disinfection process. We boost at our pump stations. This is just a slide just more or less to let you know that chloramination's been around since the early 1900s and is still widely used among public water systems. Right now, we're considered a free chlorine system, not a chloramination system.
The picture there is a little older than the early 1900s.
Yeah.
Right?
And that bullet is not silver. And and I guess there is no silver bullet. We looked at numerous technologies, and the reason we went with chloramination is quite simply it was cost effective and it was the closest we could get to a silver bullet to ensuring that we would be able to achieve compliance. So I gotta flip here. This is kind of a little bit of repetition, but the Safe Drinking Water Act is what drives the regulation. The concentrations have not changed. They've been 60 and 80 since stage 1, but how they're calculated has changed. It used to be the average across the entire system. Now it's a locational running average. So each of our sample locations, we have to look at the average of that. We can't look at it as a system whole, but site specific. That's what's hurting us, is that change in calculation. Just a little bit of history about the regulation. This is just the scheduling that Mike's already touched base on. This is just kind of a slide of a treatment process. You have your source water, you add you bring it into your plant, you add your chemicals. The most important chemical we add is a coagulant, and that removes the dirt, if you will. It helps us. It's a first cleansing stage. We create a flock, which is kind of like taking snowflakes and making snowballs. And we settle all of that out. We go through filtration. Primary disinfection occurs, and then after primary disinfection, that's where we would add the ammonia into the system to create the chloramine as water then goes into the distribution system. And that's just kind of a graph that shows that. This essentially shows the exact same thing. It's just in the bottom left-hand corner, you have an overview of our picture of our plant, and then just the kind of the line drawing showing that same process. This slide's important because this is where we get it right. We have to create a monochloramine. We have to make sure that we're doing everything right, we're getting our ratios right, so we don't create a dichloramine or a trichloramine. And our design has all of the instrumentation and all of the analyzers and then the subsequent instrumentation so that we can ensure the proper feed and that we're creating a monochloramine. The reaction is, for all practical purposes, instant. This talks about the ratio, just talked about the ratio 3 to 1 to 5 to 1. And of course then the need to maintain the residual through the system. The difference between free chlorine and chloramines is free chlorine, the chlorine is very volatile, so you can't maintain it in your system, you have to boost. Chloramines is persistent, so you maintain that residual through your system without having to boost. And it also disrupts the formation of your disinfectant byproducts.
the item 4 on there is the one when you do your research on chloramination. You use less chlorine in the process. So you do lose that overall, at times you'll see a chlorine taste or smell in the water. That should be reduced immensely by
Yes.
moving forward with this project.
And by boost, you mean along the line you have to insert,
Yes.
Yes, sir.
it doesn't have a shelf life as long as.
Correct.
Yes, sir. You hit it
Chemical
right on the
system.
head. Okay.
We add chlorine at three of our 4 pump stations right now, plus at the plant.
Right.
The chlorination challenges, our challenge is the TOC removal, which is your total organic carbon. And we're actually putting in an acid feed to enhance the coagulation process. We're adding caustic, we're adding, of course, we're adding ammonia, we're also adding an inhibitor. And so some of the challenges that we would face with this process are listed there. But the design actually takes all of those all of the challenges into consideration. The last bullet, we've talked about this before, but probably should highlight it. We'll have to do a similar upgrade, a much less expensive upgrade to the Brickner plant to maintain it, because you can't feed free chlorine into a chlorination system. You would have a tremendous taste and odor problem if you did that.
Can we start a little bit on this? Past
Yeah.
history, many here can remember when we were in the process of making changes to become in tune with another environmental regulation from MDE about a covered reservoir. We went to our 2 storage tanks on the west end, increased the height, and there was some public outcry in regard to pressure issues. Of course, none of that transpired.
Wasn't there?
Yes, sir, there most certainly was. Yes, and there's always individuals that have a differing point of view, and chloramination also has a group that will probably bring a different point of view in here. You know, our presentation, of course, we want to move towards chloramination. It's been approved by MDE. The money's been approved. It's just how far we go forward with the project. We can furnish more information. We have an extra chloramination document that I've put in for the mayor and council to look at. But, you know, once again, a lot of the same process, lead and copper corrosion, toxic to fish. The main issue with the chloramination is you can ingest it, water, bathe in it, there's no issue. It's when it comes in contact directly with the blood organs. For fish, breathing it, using the gills, that they take it directly into them, or if you were in dialysis, directly into the blood that way, then it causes issues with you physiologically. But it's just typical water.
Yeah, and chlorine does the same thing. It's just the filtering process that the medical communities use, and the aquarium folks that have aquariums and that sort of thing. They'll need to make sure that they're addressing the nitric component as well as the chlorine component.
Once again, what's going to help us probably as much as anything is our flushing program that we
Yes.
use to keep the water flowing through the system. We'll have an enhanced flushing program with it. Once again, there's the chemistry part of it is popping up on here now.
I knew I
There
should
is
pay
a
more
mistake
attention
on
to
there. It's
10th grade
actually
chemistry.
H2O, not 320. That's one we didn't catch on that.
Yeah, we
but
did not.
Bob brought it to
Yeah.
our attention on that. Once again, here's the flushing that we'll do with it for helps in nitrification, which is the organic compound contaminant in the water to make sure they keep flowing through, so we don't get the THMs to form or the halicetic acids in the end of our water system.
Yeah, and we already have a flushing program in place, and actually we've already began ramping it up this year in preparation, so that when we got there, we already had it figured out. And some of the other things we'll do is pH monitoring in the system, because in the event that you do have any nitrification, that shows up first in your pH. So we'll watch that, and we'll know where to flush if we need to. So we kind of have those things planned out.
We have a public outreach program that we're going to do. We'll be making these presentations to all the stakeholders Aaron will be assisting us using all of our means available here at the city to get the word out to you. Questions and answers all come back to us so that we can inform everyone of what our process is, what the cause and effect will be, and so everyone knows as we move forward, so no one is surprised by anything. Once again, we've already touched base with a lot of these groups. We'll be doing something formal here very soon. The medical group, as I spoke before, kidney dialysis is a main concern for the filtering. Most of the equipment manufactured in the last 15 years has the capability to take out chlorine and chloramines both, so we don't see a big push for equipment changes on that. Most of it's already set up. We had our timeline listed in there. We plan to make every date in that as we have in the past, so we'll keep you informed along the way for what's going on. Once again, in January, February, we'll probably take this show out on the road. If you all get any questions, feel free, send them right back to Nancy and I or Jeremy. We'll get everybody in the loop and keep them answered for what needs to occur.
See that you have your work cut out for yourselves. Following your advice, Googling Rutland, Vermont, I see that on a non-binding referendum, the voters voted this down, and I can see that you're right, there's
Yes, sir.
organized groups, and I'm assuming we'll see them here.
And
Maybe
I
they'll bring
assume
up
the
fluoride
information
whether that
center is short for somebody who generally opposes it. The group.
Yes, sir.
Yeah, it's a little bit of a misnomer.
That's
Yes.
correct.
Yeah.
Do the groups that oppose this have some sort of financial interest in opposing it?
I have no idea.
Or is it,
We looked at granular activated carbon, other systems. I don't know if there's a group behind that funnels money, a pack in to keep those moving,
Yeah.
to try to get other types of filtering process in place. I'm not aware of anything.
I'm not either.
okay.
Good. I think stressing where it's operating successfully and being truthful about any issues and how those
Absolutely.
issues were addressed and resolved and how we'll do it
Yes.
is the best way. No sugarcoating, just, where is it working? And especially places our size, our scale.
Yeah, and
Scale of our system.
Cumberland
Yeah.
currently utilizes this process. It's the only other.
That's interesting.
That's
They
interesting.
don't have fluoride in their system, then,
Yes, they do.
Do they?
Yeah, they do now.
They do now.
You mean
okay.
fluoride?
Yes.
Right?
Fluoride.
Fluoride.
Yes.
Fluoride, I meant.
Yes, sir.
I'm sorry, I just want to be sure.
Yeah.
Other large-scale users,
Leesburg.
Fairfax County.
We actually visited that system,
Yeah.
and huge system, but they pull their water out of the Potomac, so to that, they have consecutive systems and so forth.
Same water.
Same water,
DC Water, are they still?
yes, DC Water is.
DC Water.
Um,
I mean, they're up into furnished water up into Maryland also. They're use chloramination.
Yeah, and MDE has been very conservative in their approach. We worked with them extensively in the approval process because, with them funding the project, we had to make sure they were comfortable. And actually, we're the first system in Maryland that they have permitted because even though Cumberland has it, that plant is located in Pennsylvania. So they weren't, and it's been there since, I think, the 40s. I think that was the disinfection that they went to initially. So this is, so MDE's been especially diligent to make sure that they had their I's dotted and T's crossed, and we did too. So there's a fairly high comfort level in the, that we have as far as what we've done thus far.
Well, good work as usual.
Thank you. And
Does
we'll be
anyone
back.
now
I'm
have
sorry.
any other questions or comments on that?
The bottom line of all this, though, and your presentation is that this is as safe or safer than the present process.
Yes, sir. And we actually feel we'll give our consumers a better product.
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
Thank you.
Yes, Mike. Thank you.
Thank you.
Yes, thank you.
Thank you.
The next and last item on our agenda is the proposed abandonment of a rail line by CSX Transportation, and our city engineer has put together a nice memo for us on this topic. Let's turn it over to him.
for several years, we've been talking to CSX about the rail spur that I'll show you here in a minute on Google Earth that basically starts out at the South Point development south of Hagerstown and comes into the city, crosses Willson, and winds up at the first urban fiber plant. Several of those crosses, and there's a bunch of them, there's 6 of them in the city that are paved streets. There's at least 2 or 3 others that are either paper streets or outside the city limits. But the ones that are in the city that are paved oftentimes are in bad condition, and also the school buses have to stop for them, and every morning and every afternoon, and we've had complaints about that. So for years we've talked to them about that. The line has been vacant for decades. It was reconstructed during the first urban fiber project. I don't know that it was actually ever used. Prior to that, it might have been decades before that it was used. So we've been talking to them about that. Well, then last Wednesday, we found out that CSX has filed an abandonment request with the Surface Transportation Board that basically says that they're abandoning the line. It's probably the first one of these that's happened in Hagerstown in 50 years, maybe 100 years. The only example I could think of is where the Herald Mail's at. That used to be a train station down there. At one point, there was a rail service that came in there and it was abandoned. And the adjoining property owners took over the property and that rail corridor is no longer there. So with this filing that, I guess let me just show you quickly here where the line is. Follow. This right here is the rail line that goes down to Conservative. It's the only customer on this line. Here's South Hagerstown High School. Here's Dow's. Here's the microphone. I could use this as well. Thank you. Okay. This is South High. Dow's development. Crampton, Scarlet Hills is being developed right here. The line, this is the CSX line that goes to Conservative, so it's staying. There's no changes to that. But there's a spur line that comes off and goes up through this development. It enters the city somewhere in here. This is all outside the city limits. Crosses Coon Avenue here. This is Solid A Oil, so it basically goes right through the center of their operations. Zoom in a little bit on that. Crosses Willson Boulevard. Here's Minnick's Funeral Home. Continues across Oak Street, Stockyards. Continues across First Street, Hagerstown block. Goes a long stretch up by them to Frederick Street. Here's the Potterfield Pool. Continues over, crosses Eastern Boulevard, and winds up going into the first urban fiber plant here. Years ago, it continued and was what was now Eastern Boulevard and actually went the whole way out, across the dual highway, across Jefferson, and where Antietam Metals, is that what it's called?
Maryland Metals.
Maryland Metals. That's the same line. It's just the section in the middle here has been removed. That's the history of it. So that gives you a flavor for what the corridor looks like. I can show you any details of that if you'd like. So the issue is that with them filing the abandonment, we have a decision I think we have to make. We have 30 days to decide whether or not we want to either A, just do nothing and allow the process to take its course. And what will happen is when CSX gets around to it, they'll come in, they'll take out the tracks, they'll take out the crossings, they'll take down the gates, everything that's out there. And the property, I don't think they'll actively go out and notify the property owners, but the property would just basically revert to the adjoining property owners, and the rail corridor is forever eliminated. And that's a perfectly acceptable option. But, and this is, we just wanted to make you aware that if we wanted to do something differently, the option we have that we found is a process called rail banking, where if we ever wanted to have rail service restored on this line, or if we wanted to build some sort of a trail, the process we would use is rail banking. It's fairly complicated and it will take a lot of time. But basically it would start with the city sending a letter to the Surface Transportation Board, and there's an example of what that letter would look like in your packet. This page on rail banking is what we found to be very helpful. On the back is the sample letter. It goes to them, and the process starts where we would sit down with CSX and negotiate with them about the process. It would get appraised. The city would have to purchase the corridor. What the value of that is based on all the negotiations. There are grant programs out there that could hopefully be used if we go this route to pay for the acquisition. There's also grant programs that would pay for any trail development that we would do. And the transfer from CSX to the city would be negotiated. At that point, we could just sit on it. Technically, we just sit on it, or really what the rail banking program was, the laws that were passed for that were established was that a trail be built, a recreational trail be built on that rail corridor that could be used by the public. That normally would be something I'd be pretty excited about. This corridor, it's a little bit questionable how valuable this corridor is for a trail, and I outlined some of those things in the memo about some of the reasons that kind of make this trail not quite as good of quality as that we would like to see. But there is a potential, and the last map of the packet, I'll just mention that was put together by our planning staff, shows a potential of a trail that could potentially start at South High, cross the rail line, and then the red, it could start at South High, go through this property, cross the rail line. This is the corridor we're talking about, up to the stadium, developing a trail in there, eventually having a trail that goes from Municipal Stadium through Hager Park, through Memorial Park, that would have to cross the rail line again somehow, across from the Public Works office, and then into City Park. That would be a very nice trail there, but this little piece in and of itself does not make a particularly attractive trail.
Rodney, on the document, it talks about 0.9 miles. Friday, you were checking on the mileage. Seems
Yeah,
a
I
little
think if we decide to go the rail banking route, we're going to have to clarify with CSX exactly what they're abandoning, because our distance that we're getting is more like 1.2 miles. If you go from where it leaves the main line of the CSX Railroad to First Urban Fiber, it's like 1.2 miles. So that's the that's the issue before us, is whether or not we want to try to which of these two options we want to go.
Can I ask a question? How does the abandonment of the line affect the value of the First Urban property for economic development of that site?
I can take that if you want. If there are prospects either willing to lease or purchase the First Urban Fiber Cascade property, if they have a need for rail once it's abandoned, it would be a property they would no longer consider for a client who has a rail need. So I think there's a point of consideration in this for redevelopment activity in that area based on a cost-benefit analysis of the opportunity to maintain rail access to that area for redevelopment purposes. I did a quick look at the vacant and underutilized properties in the city outside of the CCMU zoning area, which is a inventory that the planning office has put together. There's 63 vacant properties. 73% of those do not have adjacent rail. So we have a limited inventory of properties to meet the needs of prospective businesses with rail needs.
So are you saying the third option is to oppose the abandonment?
I don't know that that's an option.
Oh, you can oppose it.
You
They're not.
can oppose them. I certainly would recommend we do the rail banking
Yeah.
for the following reason. And tell me if I'm wrong, Rodney, from reading your memo. I think we've all read it, but for the public to know. Under option one, that is an option and it's done. It's over with. We don't do anything. It's abandoned. It's broken up, and that's it. Option two, the rail banking, is nothing but giving us more options. So we say we want to do the rail banking. We have not committed ourselves to financially anything. We actually have not committed ourselves to anything except starting a process that, if achieved, could take well over a decade.
Could.
And I acknowledge with you that this is not necessarily the best looking rail trail in the world, but it also does slow things up and saves, as I understand it, probably the rail line for some time, if in fact there were a potential user. Although once it's abandoned, I don't know that there's anything we could ever do, even if we had a potential user there. But I would certainly recommend the rail banking. I don't know if we would be able to successfully fight the abandonment on the thought of speculation that somebody could come there to use it.
I don't know the answer.
Right, I don't either, Martin.
But I do know that abandonments are opposed.
Oh, I'm very aware of that. I've been involved.
That's why they have to apply for
Right,
them.
I've been involved with
The rail bank also appealed to me because it doesn't commit us right now, and it keeps our options open, and it gives us a negotiating posture. I like that.
Right.
Not just along that line, there's other CX locations.
You'd
yeah.
have many decision
I-
points down the road that you'd have to decide if we want to continue that process.
And I think Lou's right, Marty's right, rail banking is the way to go. There's another factor here. If these 6 crossovers are closed, that gives us some future options for opening other crossovers, right?
That's my understanding.
And does that occur whether we rail bank or not?
I don't know. That's a good question. I haven't been able
But
to
if
get
we
an
do
answer to.
rail bank, it does apply, right?
Well, you have to nail
I
it
think so.
down.
I
They
think so.
might use that for a crossing in Frederick or something.
Well, we'll find out.
Yeah.
But those are things that, Dawn, I think
Right.
we have to understand. And
Yeah.
In this document, it says that you have to eliminate 3 to get 1 new one anywhere.
Okay. So we're
Whether
closing
that's for a
6, we get-
trail, whether it's for a road, that's their
but
criteria.
we may not.
But it gives us an advantage that we wouldn't
Yeah,
have
yeah.
otherwise.
I think so.
Yeah.
Right.
Okay. You got, I think you got 3.
That's only subject to an interpretation of the rule.
Yeah. Well, of the 3 to 1 rule,
Right.
yeah.
I mean, we're speculating at the moment that,
Yeah, but we're losing, we have nothing to lose by doing this.
And-
That's my point.
who is responsible for the rail once it's abandoned?
If we
In other
do-
words, let's say option 1, we say, you know what, this doesn't make good sense for us to assume responsibility for as a city, and we're not interested. CSX, I'm assuming they come in, they pull the rail up,
Right.
clean the
ties.
place up, and goes back to the property owners. If the city assumes responsibility for that banking, what I hear Lou saying is it banks the possibility for use by another user some point down the road if we can negotiate with the rail entity to reuse or reopen or reaccept the spur. But you haven't told me yet if we bank it, does CSX still come in and pop the rail and the ties up and get rid of it?
Yes.
Because that removes that option.
My understanding is they'll remove the rail and the tie, but they can't remove any structures. Let's say there was a bridge or something on this rail line, which there's not, then they couldn't remove that. But they can remove the rail and
So either way, they're going to remove the rail and ties and everything.
Yeah, because it's
So
not
the onus
usable.
would be on some owner, let's take First Urban Fiber, for example, to have to come back in and build 1 mile worth of rail,
That's exactly right.
or the city.
Right. Well, whatever we negotiate.
And you know, look at this map, and I understand the notion of options, but this option of a trail that goes through the middle of a property that's yet to be developed, I mean, you know, we basically just took a planning tool and drew a line straight through the middle of some guy's property.
There's a drainage easement through that area, but.
Right, on the
you're
left
right.
side.
You're right. It's a little pie in the sky.
Yeah, either way, CSX comes in, whether it's abandonment or banking, they come in and remove the rail.
And that's why I asked the question, is the third option opposing abandonment? Which if the ICC or whoever has to rule on this says no, then you have that economic development tool, but you can't do the trail option. Is that correct?
Well, why
I
don't we
mean, we're
get-
all getting.
No, why don't we get an answer to that? It's easy to get an answer to that. I mean, there's attorneys who specialize in just this area. and we
Well,
can-
can you change, let's say we went for the rail trail, can you, what's the deadline for changing your position? Is it by September 30th, you have to assert, is it rail trail, is it opposing abandonment? Oh, a month from their filing. Well, that's a short period of time, isn't it? 30 days for something like this?
Yeah.
You've been around 200 years, you get to
30
write a lot
days
of
from
rules.
November 25th, right?
Well, I know, I don't.
It's my understanding if we were going to file for rail banking, we have 30 days. So
From November 25th.
from their
so
date
we
of
have
their
to do it.
abandonment
Right,
filing.
but my question was,
Not much
do we have
time.
to say, we want to go rail banking, or we oppose abandonment, period? Or, because we would be a party, I would presume, that could do that. I don't know. I mean, that would be, the economic development tool. Nobody's going to, once that rail's pulled up, nobody's going to rebuild there. It's not going to be worth it, I don't think,
Well, I think if we had a user today, they'd rebuild the whole rail line. I think it's beyond use.
It's beyond use?
Yeah, the ties are gone, the rail's
Oh, if it's
old.
beyond use,
Yeah.
then what's the difference? So the rail trail sounds.
So rail banking seems like the
I say
best
rail bank, because we
option.
can
think
always
for
say
Servant
forget
Fighter
it.
couldn't use
Low
it, right?
Is
Yeah.
I'm understanding.
Yeah.
Low risk, is that what I'm hearing?
Low
Well-
risk.
Again, I hear Lou saying that we can say forget it. Does that mean if we say rail banking, that we then assume the responsibility of returning the property to the owners? In other words, let's say at the end of the day, we say, okay, we banked this thing for 7 years. Nobody's come up with a usable idea. We're clearly not going to spend $500,000 building a bike trail through the back of a bunch of industrial and commercial properties. At least I think we wouldn't. Whose responsibility then is it to return the property? Or do we have the option, once we bank it, to simply
Like a
return
quick
the
claim?
property to the property owners?
Yeah, so that you're saying the rail banking's been completed, we own it.
We assume that responsibility. Can
No,
we
I
come
think
back
you're
3 years
asking
from
when
now?
do we assume that responsibility?
What I'm
You're
saying
asking-
is 3 years from now, we come back and say, you know what? We wanted to bank it just to explore options. We really don't think it's a great place. We want to go ahead and return it. Does that open us up to an indirect challenge by some entity to say, hey, wait a second. You assume responsibility of this for this intended purpose. You can't just go turn this back over to the property owners. Because if I can't have the option of just turning it back over to the property owners, I have no interest in banking a piece of property that I have no idea what we're going to do with 3 to 5 years down the road.
Okay. I understand your question. I don't know the answer to it. We'll
No, I
find
don't
out.
know either.
We'll find out.
This does permit something, some possibility for helping the city of Hagerstown with its tax base. And if that is, if we should ever face the possibility that we could do annexation, but there has to be a rail crossing in order to work that out. This would give us some money in the bank in order to make that happen, doesn't it?
Yeah, because we're eliminating crossings,
Yeah,
that gives you that
because we're
flexibility.
eliminating crossings.
It's all probably a negotiation with CSX, but I think it gives us some flexibility.
Rodney, I'm reading a passage from your thing that reassured me. I want to read it from your memo. It says, the city would have to file a rebanking request, presumably by December 25th, I guess,
Correct.
to the Surface Transportation Board, and also a complimentary public use condition letter to request the rail banking. Filing these letters does not commit the city to acquire the corridor
Right.
or obligate, so where's our downside? It doesn't obligate us to acquire it. We
There
can
isn't
just
any
think about
downside
it.
to this.
I don't know the answer to that.
Well, the
2 hours
answer
of time.
is, as long as Rodney can verify that it does not commit us, we're just saying we have an interest in pursuing. If you can verify that, then I don't see what the
I think that's
downside is.
accurate. I think Rodney verifies that, then you
Yeah.
can give conditional approval on that verification.
Gives us time to develop a proposal and undertake
Because, yeah,
negotiations with the
we've all read
railroad.
the same thing, and I
But
find
we
it
can just,
difficult to believe that
after a
we
while,
have
say,
30
well, this
days.
isn't working.
Yeah.
One of the things that, you mentioned appraisers. one of the things the railroads used to do, I don't know, on these things, is try to get you to pay a high price, and at the same time, we're not obligated, at least in the old days, to pay the appraised price either. So it used to be, I presume it's still the same way, negotiated.
Absolutely.
But we have to buy this?
Ultimately, we would.
Ultimately.
Yeah.
Well, tonight, we're not making any commitment to do anything.
I'm good, I'm a no.
Okay.
So I hear at least 3 to go for a penny. Do you have any opinion on that?
I don't have an opinion. Nope.
Okay, well, it sounds like rail banking is the consensus
go.
then of the majority, and
There's no doubt.
we'll
At
get more
least
information.
Send a letter of
Right.
interest and then come back.
Right.
Okay.
All right, thank you very much.
Thanks, Rodney.
Okay, very good, thank you.
Well, Rodney's here.
Thank you for guys for keep bringing us stuff too.
Sorry, this was kind of short notice.
Yeah, I know. I think 30 days is
I'm
ridiculous.
just glad we caught it.
But that's part of it, that we're not obligating anything. We're just doing a notice of interest.
Right.
This was just a little Christmas present, right?
Well, Rodney's here. We sent some emails today on refuse collection. I thought maybe just if he could clarify the schedule this week because of the winter weather, and also the yard waste collection schedule for the rest of the year.
Okay. The crews got about a little less than half done last night when the snow started, and the streets were, as we all know, were really slippery this morning. So they, some of these narrow streets, they really have difficulty getting through in bad weather. So they called off their operations. So they're going to restart tonight, and they'll start collecting what they missed last night, and then they have all the items to collect tonight like they normally would for normal setouts. So basically the message is this, that they're running late, but they will get everything caught up, I would say, by Thursday. So if you have something out and it hasn't been picked up, leave it out, and I think the crews will get around to pick it up. If there's a problem, call us at extension 106, and we'll make sure they get out there to pick up whatever item was not collected.
And so if tonight is your put-out night, we still want you to put
Sit
your
it
trash
out,
out tonight.
and it
Senior
might not get
citizens.
collected at the normal time, might be running half day late, a day late, but we'll get to it as soon as we
When
can.
does yard waste stop?
Yard waste runs through all next week, and it runs through the week after that, and that's the week of Christmas.
Okay.
But, so there's 2 more full weeks of yard waste after this.
Yeah, because people have asked me about
And then
that.
is there a Christmas tree pickup, Todd?
Yeah, that's in January, and Public Works
Public Works does that.
handles that.
All right. Any other questions for Rodney or Jill while they're here? All right, thank you, guys.
All right, thank you.
Get home safely. I do want to mention the few items on the agenda that we had previously that will be rescheduled. The general obligation bond sale options. When we can get Lester Guthorn up here, that'll likely be on in January. The water and wastewater rates 5-year rate plan, again, we'll be looking at that to go to January. The request for funding for the performance budget for Maryland Theater also probably moved to January, and hopefully will be combined with some suggestions for capital improvements as well, because there's no sense having performances in a theater that requires a lot of capital improvements. So I know that there's support for the Maryland Theater here on the council, and so we'll look for a more comprehensive package there. Historic City Park Neighborhood's first decorative street sign project, we'll get more information on that also early in January, as well as the loan portfolio update. And I think that oh, and the City Center Business Retention Expansion Survey, since that was just informational, we'll also get that on the agenda in January. So a few items to catch up on, but I appreciate everyone's flexibility. We want everyone to be safe out there. It's going to be a hard freeze tonight, so look out for lots of ice tomorrow morning. With that, we'll take City Administrator's comments.
None for me. Rodney covered what I wanted to share with.
Great. Council comments. Mr. Munson.
First, I'd like to say thanks to everybody who participated, and especially city employees who participated in making these last few days as safe as possible. I also would like to say that the Symphony Christmas program Saturday night was terrific. The musical groups from around the community and a soloist by the name of Colleen Daly were just absolutely terrific. And finally, my last comment is, I read in the newspaper where Tom Ryford is leaving the Visitors and Convention Bureau, and I think that's going to be a terrible, terrible loss to the city of Hagerstown, to Washington County, and to the entire community. Tom is about the best in the state at his job, and I'm sorry to see him leave.
Mr. Alshire.
A couple of things. The first is thanks to city staff for the lighting at City Park. Even with a day delay, I think that folks still got the message and were able to get out, and I think it was definitely the right call. As I was out Friday putting up some lights myself in less than appropriate weather. The second item is, as Councilmember Munson has already alluded, read the news as well, and had the opportunity to view Tom go to dozens of functions, both as a council member and I think more so as a county commissioner. It was interesting to see Tom's ability to go to a place, show up, and know 10 facts about the place and the event that nobody else would have been able to rattle off, and you just can't buy that kind of knowledge and enthusiasm. And so I think it will be a loss to the Convention and Visitors Bureau, and certainly wish him well in his new endeavor. The last is, as we talked about the CSX this evening, we talked about some things in executive session. I will reiterate my comment that our next budget is coming upon us quickly. We have continued to do a significant amount of discussion on ways in which to expend city funds, and we need to start having some serious and significant discussions on the deficit that we face and how to limit those exposures and expenses.
Thank you. Mr. Brubaker.
Yes, just a couple more things on the events of last week, the Christmas openings from the City Square on Thursday, and the events Friday and Saturday nights. Really great for Hagerstown. And I won't reiterate everything. I want to thank the private groups as well as the city staff, all the participation and enthusiasm. It's gotten better the last few years, and I really enjoy that, people coming downtown. And I was with people from out of town, one of them not familiar with Hagerstown at all, and several very slightly familiar, and I was so proud. They attended the concert Saturday night, and I was so proud of the symphony and the attendant groups and the Barbara Ingram School and the Hagerstown Choral Society. That's what I mean by the local groups, and the symphony, and it was so professional and so well done, and it was such a mixture of old standards and new innovation and I got such great compliments from out-of-towners, again, who had no idea that we had such things in Hagerstown.
And the sing-along is always the best part.
Yes, and also the city staff for responding to these unpredictable, well, predicted but exact timing snow events. And finally, I think everyone at this table is concerned with the budget, has been trying to carefully hold down expenditures, but at the same time, find ways to move the city forward. We're all balancing that, and I just want to make that comment. I don't think there's anybody here that's not concerned with the budget, so I will add that.
Thanks. Mr. Metzner.
I would just agree with everything that everybody has said so far, and just would note the passing of Ricky DeLauder, who is a 28-year veteran of the city of Hagerstown in the Water Department, and also a classmate of mine from North High. Either I'm getting old or some of these folks are dying way too young, and probably a little bit of both.
Penny.
Just that the events were great, A lot of hard work from my end with the ones who helped me.
Well, thank
as
you
well
to you
as
and all the
city
rest of the
staff,
volunteers.
I mean, that's it. The volunteers have really come on board.
Yep.
So-
We couldn't do it without them.
Yeah, and at some point, I'm going to take every council member up Mulberry, down Valley, down over Cross Street, and down Fairground to see the wonderful job that is being done with the partial paving after the gas company has come through. It's absolutely horrible. And again, when we're looking at all of these other streets that have to be overlaid, I still do not understand why the gas company is not responsible when they do a project such as this to be required to do that whole street again. It's a nightmare. It really is a nightmare. That's it.
All right. And I would echo the congratulations and the thank yous to all the, like Penny said, the volunteers that make the things happen, the holiday events that were happening. The city staff has done a great job of making the town look beautiful and putting us all in the spirit. I will say that for all the folks at home who are watching our meeting live, cozy under their blankets, they could stay tuned for another installment of On the Record with yours truly. And otherwise, we'll look forward to more feedback from everybody. And hope everyone gets home safely. This meeting will be adjourned. Thank you.
You're watching On the Record with Mayor Dave Geispertz. I'm Erin Wolf. Last time we looked back at the citywide accomplishments of the current mayor and city council. Now in this episode, we'll take a look at how this administration is moving our community forward, specifically with downtown redevelopment. Thanks again for joining us, Mayor.
My pleasure.
So we'll cut straight to the chase. Two major projects up for consideration by Mayor and City Council this year, those being the stadium and the Board of Education moving its central offices downtown. What are some of the challenges that may have contributed to both of those projects not becoming a reality?
I think in both cases, the city was willing to be a partner in making those projects move forward. With the Board of Education, we were willing to roll out the red carpet. We wanted to help acquire any property, demolish any property, and create parking that would make that project move forward. In the end, I guess that wasn't enough for the Board of Education to want to be a part of the community of workers that number over 3,000 according to our data in downtown, and to be a part of all the other centrally located government offices that do exist in downtown. With the stadium, it took the council a while to determine what location we would want to build a stadium in, but the commitment to funding that project was there by the city and the county. We're pretty sure we could have gotten the state funding for the third of that project, but the bottom line is we could not get a third of that stadium project privately financed, which is what it would have taken to move that project forward.
So when taking on projects of that magnitude, the city currently has plans in place, they have been in place, but they help guide the planning and development decisions. Can you touch on some of those plans?
Sure, the city has a comprehensive plan that is mandated by the state to be updated every few years. The comprehensive plan looks at goals for our future in development citywide. The Sustainable Community Plan, used to be called the Community Legacy Plan, is also a state mandated plan that really focuses on our strengths and challenges just in the urban core. We have the Arts and Entertainment District Plan, which identifies synergies between entities in downtown in the A&E district and looks at strengthening that district, building on the assets that we already have. And we also have the city's downtown master parking plan, which identifies ways that we can maximize our parking system and increase capacity in certain areas.
So back to the Sustainable Community Plan, what are some of the key aspects of that?
Well, it's important to know that the Sustainable Community Plan has been developed by city staff with input from a group of community stakeholders.
The Sustainable Community Plan was guided by the city's comprehensive plan. The specific strategies, though, were driven by the thoughts and contributions of the Sustainable Community Work Group, made up of organizations that have a stake in the quality of life and success of our urban core. Throughout the summer and fall of 2011, a series of meetings was held, whereby city staff gathered the recommendations of the work group members. Staff then orchestrated that information into the plan, which was submitted to the state and approved in 2012.
It sets out a vision for our future, while it also assesses our strengths and challenges, and also creates objectives and strategies for implementing the goals inside the plan.
So earlier this year, Mayor and City Council was approached by SORA, who offered to put together a master redevelopment plan for downtown. Why did this administration decide not to move forward with that proposal?
Well, you're right. SORA is a development company who presented an unsolicited proposal to the mayor and council, basically seeking to be our master redeveloper. The agreement that they sought, in our legal counsel's opinion, was a delegation of our legislative function, meaning that they were asking us to turn over the planning authority of the city to them, a private party. So that was one of the major concerns with the proposal that was being presented. The other concern was that we would be eliminating our competitive bidding process by signing an agreement like that. And the third major obstacle to making that agreement happen was the price tag. It cost over $1 million for basically what amounted to a year-long planning process, with the end being concepts for projects, but no real guarantee that projects would be a part of that.
So then moving forward, what is this administration doing for downtown redevelopment and revitalization?
Well, we continue to look for opportunities to create public-private partnerships. We're very grateful to the governor and lieutenant governor for including $100,000 in their budget last year for downtown revitalization effort. We're going to take that money, and we have now 14 proposals that have come in to analyze the economics of downtown, to look at our strengths and weaknesses, and to present us with cost-benefit analyses of up to 8 catalyst projects. So the idea is to identify projects that would enhance our downtown economy. And we'll be moving forward with that process in December, and very much looking forward to getting community input on those things. The First Third grant program is a program where we want to support the individuals and businesses who are investing in downtown by providing financial support for major investments in downtown properties. For instance, if you buy a property and you want to invest $750,000, the city would be willing to come up with $250,000 for a viable project that will enhance downtown and build the property base that we're trying to achieve.
The city has property available through its competitive negotiated sale process. These would all be eligible properties for the program, but there are several more opportunities for businesses, investors, and developers to participate in the First Third grant, both downtown and citywide.
I think it's important to recognize the investment that is occurring in downtown. We've had over 30 ribbon cuttings since taking office, and many of those businesses have been downtown businesses. So I encourage everybody in the community to rediscover downtown if they haven't been down here for a while, and support the businesses and individuals that are investing in downtown. I really do think it's our responsibility as a community to support these responsible investors.
Thanks again for your time, Mayor.
Thank you.
Now, if you're interested in learning more about the city's plans we've mentioned here and the upcoming economic analysis for downtown, go to hagerstownmd.org. Take a look at the Department of Community and Economic Development's website. Click on the Plan tab. Thanks so much for watching.